To be able to walk into a home that you've designed, that you've built from the ground up is kind of badass. My tiny house was built specifically for me. I believe tiny houses offer an opportunity for wealth building, for getting to home ownership a lot quicker, and the ability then to focus on experiences in life and family versus chasing what society says is the American dream that ends up being elusive. Hello and welcome to the Miss Gypsy Soul Tiny House, 360 square feet of tiny house luxury. Come on in. This tiny house was the realization of a dream that started 25 years ago. Downsizing was something that I've wanted to do since my daughter was in kindergarten, and she's 31 now. I was a young single mom, having to be very responsible and make decisions based on finances, and I knew that once I was past all of that and she was headed off into her own, that I wanted to be able to make decisions kind of based on wants versus requirements. I just wanted a lighter lifestyle. I am what I like to say, a girly girl. So I have a nice sized bathroom, full counter space, washer dryer combo, bathtub, shower, and I have a macerating toilet. I wanted to make sure wherever I parked my tiny house, I had a bunch of light, and I think I have 17 windows, so I certainly accomplished that. Light on all sides. I didn't need the storage stairs that you'll see in a lot of tiny houses, so I wanted my stairs to be more focused on the aesthetics and decor. Cooking is not my favorite thing to do. I didn't dedicate as much space to a kitchen as maybe some other tiny houses do, but I wanted to be able to include my walk-in closet, which is not as common for a tiny house, and that's one of the big things about designing your tiny house. You get to design it how it works for you. This dream for me started out as an RV. All of my friends and family knew that I wanted to have that kind of mobile, freeing lifestyle once my daughter was grown. In my downsizing process, I didn't want to feel like I was really giving up things. I've lived in some really nice spaces and still wanted to feel that same level of comfort and enjoyability. As I started looking into the RVs, they were in the $300,000 to $500,000 range, the ones that I like. Of course, there's some cheaper, but I kind of have some high-end taste. A dream can take a while to manifest. At any point you change your mind, you get to dream a new dream. The tiny house ended up being a fraction of the cost of the RVs that I was interested in. I initially thought my tiny house was going to cost about half of what it cost. One of the mistakes I made early on as an inexperienced builder was trying to gauge the cost of my build from someone else's build. And in hindsight, they had done all of the work themselves on their tiny house, had done it over, I think, maybe almost a 2-year time period. I used all contractors. My build happened in a matter of 3 months, and so a lot of my material was expedited. I always caution new builders to make sure that you're factoring apples for apples. When I built my house 3 years ago, I probably paid about $85,000 total. My lot rental is around $500 a month, and that includes my utilities. That is probably a fourth or a fifth of what I have been paying for an apartment in Uptown Charlotte. If you look at the tiny house community, you really see it as a young, white hipster movement. I'm neither. There are very few people of color in the movement. There are more coming. There's the preppy schoolies and the van dwellers who are buying the expensive Sprinters and traveling, California, and they're surfboarding, and you see all their cool pictures. And then you've got the segment of people who live in a van because they don't have anywhere else to go. There's some train of thought around whether tiny houses are actually poverty appropriation, where people have the financial privilege to choose to live this lifestyle versus people who have to live the lifestyle because they don't have. One of the gray areas of tiny houses is that cities don't necessarily allow you to park them in urban areas. Rural areas and RV parks are more welcoming to tiny houses. Those aren't some of the safest spaces for people of color. And while all the books could tell you about a tiny house build and all of that kind of stuff, what they didn't prepare me for, especially as a person of color, was racism. Trying to make sure there's representation in the overall community. Someone likened it to pushing a boulder uphill. It's been frustrating, it's been a challenge. Most of the cities have housing crises. Affordable housing is a challenge wherever you go. If cities would consider tiny homes as opportunities, that brings in more people. It's been totally disappointing because you're thinking we're building community and this is new and this is innovative, and you realize it's still not a community, because if everybody's not represented in the community, it's not a community. True community, everybody has a seat at the table, from all backgrounds, all walks of life, all financial statuses. It's equitable. There are always, I think, going to be those differences. I don't think the people who have the financial privilege are necessarily wrong, but I think they have to have an awareness of the other segment of people who are here because they have no options. And there's somewhere along there that the conversation has to happen so that you're pulling people along and you're blazing a path that everybody can travel versus the two separate paths. There's a lot of noise in the world, expectations of how you should live your life, what success looks like, what financial wealth looks like. The traditional definition of wealth looks like big, a lot of square footage, high payments, excess, more looking like money, and a tiny house is definitely going in the opposite direction. And I think a lot of people frown on it because it looks like you're giving up. People of color are dead last in percentages of home ownership. If you've already had the big house, you sell the house and you're now downsizing by choice, that's a different sell for a person of color who may not have had and is still trying to pursue the American dream and achieve the house. And if the tiny house looks like work, or it's kind of like the Laura Ingalls Little House on the Prairie deal, that's not something that sounds very interesting, which is one reason that I share my story so that they can see what a tiny house can be. From a maturity standpoint, having lived life, I realized that wealth is more in life experiences and opportunities versus things. Your dream is for you and it's not for everybody else. I designed a life that I loved. It was definitely choices that were made so that I could achieve the tiny house dream for me. It wasn't for anybody else.